Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So, I love these earrings. These are my personal favorites. I made them several years ago. Oops, and I just dropped one. And I wear them all the time. These are done in sterling. So let me turn my camera so you can see them a little bit with all the stuff in the background. That's my toolbox and the big mess behind it. They are just so pretty, and I use some very old turquoise beads that I took off of a necklace I had, believe it or not, back in my teens. And these are turquoise chips that I also had on a necklace. So you're going to need a lot of materials to make these. They're just so pretty. I just love them. So, like I said, I wear them all the time. I get a ton of compliments on them. And when I do my shows, people always ask me if they're for sale. And I say, no, these are my personal favorites. And I've never made another pair because there are so much material involved. So, before we get started, if you're new to my channel, I'm very detail oriented. So, for those of you that are used to wire wrapping, please be patient. And it takes 1 second to give me a little smiley thumbs up. Your comments and feedback are really appreciated. So let's get started. I'm gonna turn my camera down and hope I stay in frame. I think I need to move this up a little bit. Okay, so here are the beginning materials. You're going to need 20 gauge wire times 2, so 2 pieces, 8 inches long. This is going to be for the loop frame. So let me show that to you. So we're going to be making our loops to connect our beads. And we're going to talk about the beads in a minute. I've hammered the bottom and created a paddle on each bead. Okay, so this 20 gauge wire is going to be twice to create our loop frame. Then you're going to need 18 gauge times 2 at 4 inches long. That's going to be the frame. So this is our frame right here, okay? And we're going to be connecting the loops here. And then you're going to need 22 gauge times 2, 3 inches long. That's going to be your center bead. That's why you only need 2 of those. And then you're going to need 22 gauge times 8, and that's going to be our side beads because there are 2 beads on each side. So we're going to have a total of 5 beads per earring. And then for the beads, I used 2 millimeter. I'm going to be using 2 millimeter and 4 millimeter on these. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for the center yet, but you're going to need, in my opinion, to get what I call the grunt work out of the way. And as you can see, I've already prepared one. This took me 2 hours this morning just to prepare all my beads and my wires to hammer each piece. So I've already started with 3 of the side beads. And this is going to be for 8 inches. And so what I would recommend is that you cut all your wires, your 22 gauge times 2 and your 22 gauge times 8. And the reason is these are for your beads. So the 2 here are for your center beads and the 8 here are for the side beads. And if you get those out of the way, it makes it a lot easier to move on with the creative process of making your earrings. Now, you could also do this as a pendant, and you would just put a bigger jump ring here, and you would just run your cord or chain through the top, and that would be absolutely beautiful as a pendant. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to create the 2 remaining beads, the center bead and 1 more side bead, because as I mentioned, I already did these in advance. And I don't know if I even mentioned it took me over 2 hours to prepare everything this morning and do my beads. That's what takes the longest. So we're going to get our 3 inches and our 1 3/4 of an inch. So the 22 gauge times 8 is 1 3/4 inches long, okay? And the 22 gauge times 2 is 3 inches long. So I'm going to show you how to hammer and create the paddle and then wrap the bead. And then I'll talk to you about how many wraps we're going to be doing. So you want to make sure, and I used 100% scrap wire on this 22 gauge. Really, really important when we're hammering that our wire is really straight. So here's a really good technique. To straighten your wire, this has got little tiny bends all the way up in it. So I went up and down with my flat nose first, and then I'm using my hammering block, and I'm just going over that wire to make sure it's really straight. So it does 2 things. It straightens your wire and it hardens your wire. The next thing you want to make sure of is that your end is flush. So I'm going to hold this down on my hammering block and I'm going to flatten the tip. So I'm going to flare it out and I'm just going to start working only on the tip until I can see it start to paddle. So you see that little paddle there? Then I'm going to come up. So I'm going to start tapping up, and I'm doing a lighter tap, and I'm going to tap up. This is going to be our center bead. I'm going to turn it over because I can see I'm getting unequal pressure, and that's because I'm not standing up. Then I'm going to get my buffer, and you don't need to use a lot of pressure when you're doing this, but you want to stay really close to your paddle because this is 22 gauge wire and it's thin. And I'm just gently taking off any frayed edges and rounding out that paddle. So I'm not doing all the beads because it's the same thing, you guys. So I'm just doing a center bead. Now I want to make sure, because I already made my other one, if you're going to do this all at once, I would recommend that you match them up to make sure that this paddle is relatively as long as my middle paddle. So I'm going to hang that there just to get a visual, and I need to hammer up just a tiny bit more. So I'm just going to turn this over, and I'm tapping fairly lightly, coming up the leg, and I'm going to drop my bead back down on there. And this is my 4mm faceted garnet. This is what I mean by you want to do your center pieces at the same time. Still needs to be a little bit flatter on top. So I'm going to put a little more pressure. Make sure I didn't mess up my paddle because I was trying to stay away from it. And you don't have to be as picky as me. And I'm always going to give you tips, tricks, and techniques to accelerate your journey in this magical ancient art of wire. Okay, let me drop that down in here. Now, if you're new to wire wrapping and you find pedaling your wire really hard because these are now the same length, let me show you. They're now the same length. You can just paddle, flatten the wire if you want, and let me get a piece of scrap wire and I'll show you what I mean. Always going to give you all sorts of ideas and things to inspire you to work within your limitations, where you're at right now. So this is 20 gauge, but you really need a piece of scrap 22. Let's see. Let me get a piece of scrap 22. So I can show you another technique. of what you can do with the end of the paddle if you're having difficulty with getting the shape that you want. So all you can do here is paddle up about 1/4 of an inch. Your wire needs to be really straight. Okay. So I'm just going to paddle this whole wire right here. And it could be cocked off or all screwed up. And all you have to do is where that wire is flattened is just start rolling it in on itself. And you can just leave a little loop like that. And then come behind it and kind of square it up. And then squish your paddle in, if that's easier for you. And then you would just drop your bead on it. I'll show you that in a minute. If I can find the dang hole. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you would have, and then I would just roll this in a little bit more. And then you can just flatten it up. So you would have this pretty folded in half paddle on the bottom, okay? So there are different ways you can go if you're having difficulty getting symmetry on your paddles. So you got that. So it's a really cool, different way to do it. Okay, so now I'm going to set my 2mm copper bead. If you recall in the beginning with the materials, I said I'm using 4 and 2. So here's what we have. Now on this one, you're gonna need about 1.5 millimeters of space. The center bead is going to have 6 wraps. You don't have to do that, but this is what I'm doing with this earring and making this tutorial, okay? So 1 millimeter would be right about there. Just a tiny little bit of space. So I know that I'm gonna need, if this is 1 millimeter, that's gonna give me 4 wraps, which is what we're going to do on the side beads. So the center bead is gonna have 6. I'm just gonna come up a little tiny bit. And then I'm gonna fold it. Now here's what's important. If you've paddled your wire, you wanna make sure that the paddle is on an even plane, that it's flat down, okay? You don't want it tipped up. So it's flat down, supporting it, and just giving it a little bend. Then I'm gonna get my 6-step bell making pliers. I'm gonna use the number 1. So the bend is going away from me. And the number 1 is sitting on top. And I'm just gonna bring that wire around and push it down. Then I'm going to adjust my wrist so I have control over my wire, because ergonomically our wrist is only going to turn in so much. And then I think I grabbed the wrong wire, you guys. Oh well, this goes to something else, I think, but that's okay. I'll have a lot of excess wire. This was not 3 inches. This looks like a 5-inch wire. Actually, I'm using my 8 inches. That's okay, I'll cut another piece. Let me just take off this length. So it happens. That's what I did. I picked up, I don't know what I picked up, but that's okay. That was like 5 inches of wire. Then I'm gonna turn my work around and I'm going to wrap 6 wraps on this. And you wanna make sure that when you're holding your loop that you're at the midpoint so that you can squeeze your wire around and hold it down a little bit so that your beads don't slide up and get in the way. Again, tips and tricks. And then I'm just gonna grab my wire and I'm going to swing it around. Then I'm gonna grab at the tip again and I'm going to swing it around. and I'm going to cinch that up. That's one. Now, if you find you're bending your wire too much out here, just go ahead and straighten it up. 3, 4. I'm losing control here, so I'm going to move my plier down. That's 5. And if you find that it's starting to cock off on you, just come in on your wraps. And this is going to be 6. And I'm going to turn it over so I have more control over my wire. Then I'm just going to straighten out this piece so I can control the wire. And I'm just going to swing it over. I never use chain nose very often, you guys, for this reason. Everything slips off of it. I'm just going to bring that wire over a little bit, and I'm going to cut up underneath it on an angle. I like to hold it at this point, and I'm going to roll off that tip and just snug it right in there. So here's our center darling little paddle with the garnet and copper bead. And then I'm just going to make sure everything's lined up. So now we're going to do the side bead, and it's the same thing. I'm going to paddle the end, and I'm going to match it up to the other beads. So I'm starting on the tip, and I'm flattening, I'm putting more pressure on the tip. And I'm dragging away from it a little bit. And then I'm going to drop my bead and make sure the paddle is relatively as close to the length of the other ones. So I'm just going to come in here, grab one of these little guys, and compare. And that's perfect. It's a perfect length. So let me just pull this bead out. Won't be using this for a while. And just with my 180 grit buffing block, if you notice I'm doing this very lightly, just to get the little frayed ends off, clean it up. Once this goes in the tumbler, it will polish up those little ends beautifully. So this time we're going to do 4 wraps. So you want 4 wraps on your side beads and 6 wraps on your center bead. And I'm just going to drop this in here. And again, I want to make sure that my paddle is in line. So this time I'm only going to need 1 millimeter. That looks about right to me. So I'm going to just gently fold this back, not all the way. Turn the bend away from me. Put my 6-step bell making pliers in here using my number 1. The number 1 is on top. And then I'm just going to fold this over. And then I'm going to adjust my wrist. Make sure my wire slid down, my little bead slid down there so it's not in the way. And then just push that over. Oh my goodness. Okay. So now I'm going to grab some pliers that I prefer, coming at the midpoint, and I'm going to do 4 wraps. Now I'm going to straighten out my wire here at the tip. I'm going to snug those up a little bit. So this is a very cool tip if you're new to my channel. If you find that your wraps are going down on an angle, just come underneath the base of the wrap and on top of the plier anchor off that and just squeeze them gently up. This is the 1 3/4 inch of wire that you're going to need to make this wrap. Now, if you're new to wire wrapping and you need more wire, then by all means, cut yourself more length. Cut yourself 2 inches, which should be plenty. Then I'm just gonna come up underneath it. I'm gonna snip it down. And as I mentioned, I like to hold. And I like to roll off that tip. See my wrist turning? So I can snug that little cut end in. Then this one's a little wonky up here, so I'm just gonna straighten it out. So I've got my 6 wraps and then 4 wraps of my beads all prepared and ready to go. This is why I do all of that in advance and not have to do it over and over again to bore you guys. It's the same thing for each earring. So once you get each of those out of the way, then we're gonna start to make our loops to drop our beads on, okay? So I'm gonna move those out of the way. And now I need, I think this is my 8 inches of 20 gauge wire. This time I'm gonna measure to make sure I don't screw up. So what you wanna do is you wanna mark the middle, okay? I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers and I'm going to use the number 2. And all I'm gonna do is just fold them up and then I'm just gonna swing them over. Swing one and swing the other. Then you need a little gap space, about 2 millimeters. Do this however it's most comfortable for you. This is how I like to do it. And I'm just gonna come away about 2 to 2.5 millimeters. And I'm just gonna make a bend. Notice that my wrist can't turn anymore. I found that when I do private lessons, it's easier for me to teach people in this manner. So I'm just gonna turn my work around. And this wire is riding on top here, so I want this wire to ride on top too. So I'm just gonna swing it around and then I'm gonna adjust my wrist and swing it around. Now before I do any more swinging, this is why I said you wanna do it on this do each side at a time. Do one loop on one piece of 8 inches wire and do another so that you can keep symmetry. So I know my gap is a little bit too big there, so I'm just gonna keep rolling. Then I'm gonna line it up, because normally I would do these together, you know what I mean? Do a little bit of each. And then I'm gonna roll again, and that's good gap space right there. And I'm just gonna leave that out, okay? Now I'm gonna turn my work over, and I wanna make sure that my wire, as I'm making my loop, goes under, because I want them all in the same direction, means all the wires on top. So I'm gonna come away about 2.5 millimeters, and I'm just simply going to bend my wire. Then I'm gonna get my pliers back in here. So this time I'm gonna pull the wire under, and then I'm gonna start to adjust my loop as I'm watching my gap space between the two come a little bit closer and just straighten that out. Let me see how we're doing here with our gap space. That looks good. So straighten my wires out. So see how both my wires are all on top. This is rolling to the left on top. This is rolling to the right on top. Just want to take a look at that. Make sure the spacing is the same. Okay, that's better. Okay, so as before, I'm going to come in about 2 to 2.5 millimeters away from my initial loop. I'm going to make a little bend. Then I'm going to turn my work around so I have control over my wire. And I want my wire to come, let's see, how do I want it to go this way? Sorry, you guys, my brain just had a fart. That would be me. Okay. This time I want my wire to go under, so I'm just going to swing it around. And I'm going to adjust my wrist and swing it off on an angle. Come back out a little bit. That's a little bit big, that gap. So here's what we have. This is our center. Let me look at my gap space here. It looks pretty good. And this time when I come around, this wire is going to be on top. See, if you get this out of the way, it makes life a whole lot easier for you. Just my work. This wire is going to come around on top. I'm going to start swinging it up. And then I'm just going to bring it over. So let's just straighten these out. So here's what you should have. So this is going to match up with that earring. We can adjust the sides, all of that. Don't worry about that right now. So now what we're going to do, assuming that you made all of your beads, is we're going to drop them in. That way you don't have to use a jump ring. Now, if you find that a little difficult, then certainly just make your beads. I would use less wraps on the neck so they're not too long, but they can be. Again, that's your vision. And then you just add a jump ring to drop your paddle in. But I like everything connected and attached so it can't fall out. So all of my beads are fully connected. They can't come undone because the wire isn't cut and just meeting here, okay? So what you're gonna do now, before we do anything, very gently, I'm going to tap, just very gently. Just tap my frame down, because we're gonna open these back up. Just gently. What I'm doing there is I'm very gently tapping and hardening the wire a little bit. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to open these up. So you want to get your flat nose. And you just want to come in. And at the loop, okay, you're just going to give yourself some space. Just open that up. Because we need to bring our beads in. Then at the loop, I'm just going to lift up. See how we're giving ourselves some gap space? Then at the loop, I'm going to push that one back. Push that one back. Turn this over and make it easier for myself. And just lift up on that. Looks a little wonky. That's okay. Because we're going to flatten it all down. So now I'm going to come in. Make sure you grab the right one. This is my center bead. Okay. So I'm going to come in and just swirl around, just swirling around those loops. That's why we made those gaps. So there's my center bead, and then I'm just going to come in and flatten that down. Now I'm going to bring in my side bead. Just going around the loops. Oops, almost went too far. And I'm just going to flatten that down. It'll all line up beautifully when we're done. So I'm just going to come in and drop my side bead. Then I'm going to always turn my work over so I have the best working advantage. Flatten that down. And flatten that down. So here's what we have. So you see what I mean? This is what takes you the longest right here. And I'm just going to bring these in a little bit. I'll be adjusting everything anyways, but this is really what cuts into your time, is getting all those beads out of the way. The rest goes pretty quick. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make our frame. And I'm going to decide on the bead sizes and how many I want after I make the frame, because I need to set the beads inside the frame, okay? So this is my 2 pieces of 18 gauge, 4 inches long. And we can open these up or close them down. We have a lot of wiggle room here. So I'm going to get my ring mandrel, and I'm thinking about the size that I want. Oh, where's my caliper? Was just right here, but I got so many tools out. Sorry about my arm, folks. I gotta get all this paraphernalia out of the way so that I can see what the hell I'm doing. So I don't know where those calipers went, so I'm gonna get these. These are electronic, meaning they're battery powered, and it may not be as wide as this or wider. I just wanna start out. So that's about 13.5 millimeters in width on the bottom. We can always stretch it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with that and just see. So that's gonna be the number 3 on my ring mandrel. And if for beginners, you might wanna mark your center. So if this is 4 inches of wire, this is the number 2 mark. And you can do both of them at a time, or you can do one at a time. So I'm just gonna find my center point, and all I'm gonna do is just squeeze. Just gonna squeeze those around. And then to make sure the legs match up, if one side is longer than the other, push that side over to it. So now I'm just gonna take a look at what we got going here. And I think that's gonna work out fine. I may have to open these up a little bit more. That's fine, but let's go ahead and get our frame out of the way. So I'm just holding at the center mark, and I'm pushing both the legs over into a U shape. Sorry that I was out of frame there, you guys. And I'm just gonna match them up. And I'm gonna bring these 2 legs in more. Okay. So now it's gonna go pretty fast, because this, like I said, is the grunt work. That's the stuff that drives me absolutely bonkers. Now I'm gonna even up my legs. So I'm just gonna come in with my nippers. Then I'm gonna bring them together and even them up. Okay, let's make sure they're the same length on your mat, and they are. So right now they measure 1 3/4 inch in length, but we're gonna be rolling them in as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start getting an idea of how I want them to sit here. Just making some tweaks and adjustments. Because I'm going to hammer these, it's all about shaping them around the frame. So I'm gonna open this up just a little bit more here. So I'm just gonna bring that down. It's a very subtle movement, and bring that down. Just opening them up. We're gonna be bringing these wires around the back of the frame. That looks great. So that's what we're looking at, okay? So this will be for that one. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna need to open that up just a little bit. Very, very subtle. And I'm gonna bring my frame in. That looks good. Let me see the gap space here between this one because I think this one had a little bit more gap. Yeah, it does. It's going to change anyways once we start wrapping them. So I'm just going to swing that down and swing that down. It's such a tiny, it's like moving the wire a millimeter. That looks pretty good to me. So now we're going to hammer our frame. And I'm going to hammer the arc and up the legs. So I'm going to start with the arc here, and I'm pulling the hammer away from me as I'm turning my work so that I have equal pressure as I'm going around. And then I'm going to start flaring out the bottom more by staying at about 3/4 of that frame. Then I'm going to go up the legs, just a flat tap. Move my hands back. Take a look at that, see if I've got symmetry all the way around, and I do. So now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Some artists will say there are the way that you need to move your wrist. Some call it like a backward C. Some call it like a J, depending on the direction that you're going. I'm just kind of doing more of the backward C. So if you notice, it's not a complete circle. Now I'm going to go up the legs, flat tap, just a flat tap. I'm not flaring the legs out, I'm just hardening them. And I want to compare these two before I go any further. I'm going to come up the legs a little bit more, and I'm keeping the top pinched together as I'm holding it down. Okay, let's take a look. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to flare this out just a little bit more on this one, just because I'm picky. A lot of it's going to be covered up, but it's just how I roll. And I'm just going to tap gently. I just turned it over just to make sure that my wires are flat and not bowing up. So I'm just going to tap very gently, just making sure they're flat. Okay. See what I mean? It goes really fast now. So now I'm going to be using 180 grit sanding block. These are construction grade, and I get them by the case on Amazon. And I'm going to start buffing and just getting out the hammer marks. And it does such a beautiful job doing it. And then I'm just going to go off the edges on a 45-degree angle. Be mindful when you're holding your wires up here that you don't put too much pressure on them to not bend them out of shape. So it gives it just a soft bezel on the edge. Then I'm going to come around the back. And if you notice, I'm supporting the wire in my entire hand, letting it rest against my hand. If you're using 20 gauge, be careful not to let it bend over your fingers. And I'm going to set it down and just rub up and down. this is my back. Now, if you get a little confused about which was my front and which was my back, your back is always going to have all the hammer marks. I'm just lining those legs up. These are going to be long earrings. Just mark it with a Sharpie so you know where your front is. So that's my back. It's got all those hammer marks. You can also use a 180 grit nail file. Okay. All right, so now we've got our two frames. And as I mentioned, I'm going to decide on the center beads. See how that's sitting in there? Because what's going to happen is I'm going to be bringing these wires around the back and wrapping over my frame. So now what we want to do is decide on our center beads. On these, I just ran a straight, these are 2mm turquoise. They're very hard for me to find now that are actually turquoise and not compressed stone or fake. But anyways, I'm going to run my wire through my beads here first. So this is where I need to get the idea of what I want to do. I'm thinking of garnet and 2mm beads on each side. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to get myself some 22 gauge weaving wire. And I'm going to cut, I'm not going to need a whole lot. So let me just measure this of how my beads are going to sit. I'm going to cut 2.5 inches. And then I'm going to see how this is going to look. So I'm just going to get my beads out of here. I don't want that one. And before I shape this, I'm kind of getting a visual of how many 2mm I can run up there. So I'm thinking I might be able to get 3. We'll see here in a minute. So now I'm going to shape this wire, and I can either do it on my mandrel, but I don't want it as big. Let me see how big this loop is now, how much bigger it is than the 3 since we hammered it. So there's some gap there. Let's try that. If you want, you can mark your wire in the middle. I'm just going to eye mine right now. I'm going to come up above the 3, and I'm just going to bring these up and over. Sorry, you guys, if I was out of frame. And squeeze them together. So let's see how this all meshes in. So that's too big of a loop, but I can just squeeze that in. So I'm going to grab from the sides, and I'm going to squeeze my loop in. It's going to make it smaller. That looks pretty good. Because I'm curious now, this is all trying out right now. This is how I do things. How's that going to look? So I'm like, okay, let's try that out. So I'm going to bring in my garnet. And I want to see how that's going to sit there, because it's going to create a gap, which is absolutely fine. Need it to be center. Line this guy up. I'm wondering about dropping it below too. I work total in artistic freedom, you guys. Just curious, I want to see something here. Nope, I don't like that. So let's play here for a minute. Need that to drop down. Fiddling so much right now. So that's how that's going to sit, and I love that. So now I'm going to drop my, I'm thinking 3 on each side. I'm going to drop my copper beads in. If it's too many, then I can just pull one out. So let's take a look. Oops, wrong frame. You want to make sure they're centered. So let's see how that's looking. Oh, that's going to be a beautiful earring to me. I hope you guys think so too. So now what's really important is that you center your, let's do the other side, and then we'll center these up and do them both at the same time. So I'm going to put this here. I don't want my beads to fly off. And I'm going to cut, was that 2.5 inches? I didn't write that down. Oh no. I think that was 2.5 inches. Let's see. That's 1, 2, yeah. That seems about right, 2.5 inches. Should have cut them both, but I was testing. I'm going to cut 2 3/4 because I can't remember. Okay. And this one I'm gonna, it's almost 3, so I'm gonna just mark it. All right, I'm gonna get my dowel like before. I want them both to be the same shape. I'm just gonna bring these around and cross them over. And I know that that's too big, so I'm just gonna squeeze them in. And that looks pretty good. So I need to grab some more beads. I'll be right back. Okay, so I had to grab some more beads, and I didn't want to bore you guys with me running through my box. So what you want to do now, so that you try to keep your beads in that center loop the best that you can, is find center. And just with your finger, just kind of pull this wire out a little bit, and that one, so we can keep staying on center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my needle nose, and I'm going to bend it out. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And you want these beads good and tight in here. And we can adjust it. This 22 gauge is really flexible. Don't want those sliding up. See what I mean? How they want to move. Whoops, move that one up too high. And they're going to do that. I just want to bend these down a little bit more and give myself some control over those beads. Lay this down. I'm missing a bead over here. Looks like one rolled off. That would have been a bummer if I would have wrapped it and then noticed it later. It won't be the first time. I'm just going to bend that down. And bend that down. So that looks pretty good. So now we're going to wrap it inside our loop here. So make sure you're centered up. And what you're going to do, you're going to hold very firmly. You might be feeling your beads slide a little bit. And you're going to push this wire around. Get it down a little bit. And up through the loop of the frame. Then I'm going to give it a little squeeze. And then I'm going to bring it around again. I'm going to stop there. See how everybody's sitting? I'm going to roll back on that wire. I want those beads pushed down in there. Okay. I'm going to turn my work over to make my life easier. I'm going to push up on that wire. I'm going to feed it through the middle. Squeeze down on it, but I want to make sure that everything's centered up. I'm bringing that wire around with my hand. So it's going to want to slide until we lock it in, okay? And you can move it around. Push that around to the back. I need to get that bead to slide down a little bit. Okay. Just going to kind of shape them a little bit. So that's what we have. And this, God, they're going to be beautiful, is going to go in here. They're just going to be gorgeous. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing over here, and we'll be making adjustments, as I mentioned, as we go. Just want to try to find your center. Push that wire around. God, I don't like, those are too fine tips. Sometimes needle nose are not your best friend. You don't have the same control over your wire. I'm gonna turn my work over, feed that wire up and over through. Just gonna use my hands. Let's take a look. Lovely, just lovely. Okay, we're gonna do one more wrap. Cinch those together. All the way around. And I'm gonna cut it off. So if you're new to wire wrapping, lift up on your wire so you can get up underneath it, and always cut further away from the edge of the frame, because wire stretches, especially when it's softer. And I like to grab on the loop itself and roll. And it's gonna stretch that wire. So I'm going to cut some of this length off so I can feed it through a lot easier. I'm just going to push it through with my finger. I'm always turning my work around to get in my best working advantage. Cinch that down. Whoops, just knocked over a bunch of stuff. This tendency to just drop my pliers and not see what's in the way. Lifting up on that wire. Cutting back further than I need. And I'm anchoring off the loop itself and rolling my wrist and cinching that in. So that's the back, which could be your front. It's up to you how you want it to sit. And this is the front. Just gonna push my bead down a little bit. So let's finish off this one. I'm gonna cut off some of this length because I'm gonna be cutting it anyways. Just pushing that through, swinging it around. Pushing that through, swinging it around to the back. Gonna cinch this down good and tight. Then I'm gonna lift up on my wire so I can get up underneath it. Just saw another bead floating around. I'm just gonna go ahead and lift up on that one. See how the wire isn't flush with the frame, meaning to the edge of the frame, because we're gonna stretch it. I'm anchoring off that loop and rolling my wrist towards the inside of the frame. This one is moving a little bit too much for my taste. So I'm gonna come over here and roll off of that. I'm actually tightening it up. So let's see. Want to slide it down. I'm fiddling with this one too much. I'm gonna flatten down that wire there better. Now, I stretched it even more, so I'm gonna trim off that little edge. So now it's gonna happen really fast, and then we just have to decide if we want a top bead. So now what you're going to do is you're gonna set in your loops with your hanging beads. This is my front. So it's a little fiddly, but you want your wire to be in the back. So symmetry is going to be key here. So you want to do a little bit at a time. I'm just lining up. This is what I mean. This is the fiddly part. I haven't done these in almost 3 years. And you'll be able to rock this centerpiece, the frame. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring these wires, and let's do that first. We're going to bend them down. I'm just going to come about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters from where the wire is coming around the loop right there. And I'm just going to bend it back a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing here. It's going to help me visually maintain center. yeah. So just about 2 millimeters, kind of just bend it back a little bit. Okay, that I think will help us to be able to control our wire a little bit more. Because we want it to come around the back. So our loop is going to hang on the side. So I'm going to bring this wire, got to hold very firmly, okay, around the back and through the loop. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to get my finger here, and I'm going to just turn it. And I'm not tightening down yet because I need to center this whole piece up. So like this one, I'm just going to kind of bring it through, then bring it up. This is where I'm watching my center. And I'm going to bring it around. See how we're doing here. I'm going to be pushing that up even more. There we go. I want it as close to the loop frame as possible. So let's sit that down in there. This is very fiddly, this part. If you have a better way that you want to do it, please do that. Just going to center everything up. I'm focusing the middle of this bead here on the middle of my loop. So I'm adjusting the loop frame. And I'm using my fingers a lot in the beginning because I don't want to put a lot of pressure on the wire with my pliers. This one can open up a little bit. This one can rock in a little bit more. There we go. Now it's coming together. So now we can come up, you can come up as much as you want on this frame, okay? However you want to decorate it. I'm going to lock this in for right now. Come up in between my frame using my finger, and then I'll tighten those up. But it's really secure, pretty secure now. Because remember, this is the 22 gauge. Before I lock anything in, I want to make sure everything is lining up beautifully. So I'm not going to do anything else until I do the other side. That's the critical point, is that you want them as close together as possible. It's going to be a beautiful earring. Now I'm thinking about how much I want to sell them for because of all the labor. Okay. Maybe I won't sell them. So I'm going to line this up in the center. My focus is this bead to that loop. I'm going to bring it around with my thumb and just a gentle turn. So if I need to make adjustments, I can. And I do need to make adjustments. This is why you don't want to lock it in too much yet. Turn it in, bring it around, and let's take a look. Got to turn it. And I got to push it up. It was too high up inside the frame. Okay. Just want to make sure it's center. Let's tighten up that corner first. This is going to be the most fiddly part, especially for beginners. I need to loosen this up. Come up on this frame a little bit, just so I can adjust this here. Now I've got my center, so I'm going to tighten that down. Good. Still a little bit too much gap space. This one needs to come up. It's all very fiddly at this point. I'm struggling more with this one. It's not a surprise. Okay, I gotta loosen you up again. And you're wrapping too far down. I think that's the problem. Oh my goodness, I am really playing with this one. Okay, I think I just got my center. Bring that through. This has to go towards the back more. And it's still not perfectly center. There we go. Aren't those gorgeous? They're just gorgeous. All these crazy wires sticking out. Okay, so let's come into this wrap. Start tightening it up. I don't like those. Bring, what do we got going there? We've got 2, 3 on that side. I'm just manipulating my wire with my hands. Sometimes I find that easier than yanking on a long piece of wire at the tip. And I'm debating on, right now, just need to center that up a little bit more. Got to tighten it up back here. I'm debating on at this point how many wraps I want to do. I've got to do 3 on this side. This has got to come down. That's better. Need to shift this wire over here towards the back, just lining everything up. Still too far out. Oh, I see what I did here. I got confused with my wraps that I used for my, to setting my beads. That's why it confused me so much. It happens. I need to bring these up together. Okay. And that's good and center now. So we should equally have, I'm gonna push this in a little bit. This is what I mean, but how you can make adjustments. So let's take a look over here. Didn't need. If you notice, I'm just bending with my fingers. For me, it's easier. You do whatever works for you. And then I can tighten up. Okay, let me take a look at these. Am I missing a wrap on this side? We got the two. This needs to shift down a little bit. So I'm gonna push that down. Aha, I thought I felt a little slide there. So here's what we got. These beautiful earrings. Now it's up to you if you want to decorate them up here or not. It's really up to you. So I think what I'm going to do is come through again. Do another wrap. Come through again. And I'm going to shorten the length of these a little bit. Some people like really long earrings. I'm going to straighten these up and even up their length. Okay. So let's come in and do the equal amount of wraps on this side. Gotta clean that up. Just using my finger. Bring that towards the back. And one more wrap over here. This is probably the most fiddly part of the whole process, but they're just going to be super pretty, I think. Push that down towards the frame. Just kind of pushing it in a little bit. There, I like that so much better. And the same thing over here. Push that in towards the frame. Okay, our earrings are almost done. So now we're going to decorate. So I'm going to bring them through again. And this time I'm going to make a loop. Just kind of cross them over a little bit. I am going to have to tighten that up. And tighten that up. So you want them kind of crossed over in the back. We're going to bring them through anyways, but you're just getting control over your wire. And I want that straight. So this side is a little short over here. So that's why I'm going to stop here when we start to decorate. Okay. So let's take a look. We're always looking at our earrings, right? So this one here, since it's crossing on top, I'm going to bring it through. And then I'm going to bring it down, just using my finger at this point. Now I can bring this one through. It's like we're making another loop, but we're going to do something decorative here. And then I'm going to bring it over. And I want them on an angle like that. I'm going to shorten this side up so my brain doesn't play with me, seeing so much length on one more than the other. Then we're just going to push it down. All right, so let's do that over here. Let's bring this through. And cinch it down. I want that wire straight and on an angle. Basically pitching up, right? This I already know is too long. It'll make it easier to feed it through anyways. Okay, let's come up on an angle. Straighten this wire out. Cinch it down. Now, as I mentioned, I'm always going to give you ideas and tips and tricks. I'm going to continue this concept. I like it. You don't have to. You can just keep angling up, keeping open spirals. And if you had enough length, you could do it all the way up. I don't have enough length to do that up. So you could just keep bringing this wire through and have open spirals with about a 1/16 inch in between each one. That would be absolutely stunning. But I'm going to make a loop. Just really cleaning my wire up. Straightening it out. Got to be flattened down a little bit more. So I'm going to make a loop right here. And the easiest way to do that, if you don't want to try to use your fingers, is just come in with your plier. And right here where the frame meets, I want the number 1 in there, I think. Hold on, let me think about how big I want that loop. I think that will be sufficient. So I've got the number 1 towards me, okay? My legs are going towards me. And I've got the number 2 on the outside and the wire in between. And all I'm going to do is just make a little bend. And then I'm going to swing my wire in. And it makes it a lot easier than trying to shape it with your thumb. So we've got this pretty little curve here. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to have the inside number 1 towards me. And then I'm just going to make a loop. I'm going to pitch it in first a little bit. This other wire is kind of in my way. So we have this. So you have this pretty little design. Now we could hammer that, but I'm going to go ahead and do this side. So the number 1 is up against the frame right here. I'm going to turn it a little bit and then swing my wire in. And then the same thing over here. I'm going to turn it a little bit and swing my wire in. So here's what we have. This one needs to be out a little bit more and down. That's because I did it on a different angle. If I would have done it the same way I did the other side, it wouldn't have done that. So we've got these 2 little curves in our wire here. Just going to line these up on here. Want to make sure everything's symmetrical. I'm going to cinch these down now. I'm going to get my flat nose. I'm going to cinch them down. See, now if I had enough wire, I could just keep going up. But we used 8 inches and we're almost through it. So now I'm debating on if I want to hammer those sides. And I think I do a little bit, even though I'm going to be pulling them in. We don't have a lot of room. A lot of times you can just pull your wire out to hammer it and pull it back in. I don't think I'm going to do that. So let me get my hammer. And I'm not going to do a lot. I'm just going to gently tap. And I'm going to use the ball peen size. This is actually too big. So I'm going to get, this is flat. This is a flat hammer. I'll have more room. Then I'm just going to turn it over to this side. Just see how that looks. Just textured it a little bit, flattened it out a little bit. Not a whole lot. Okay. So I'm on the back side. And you can hear by the pressure that I'm just doing light taps. I want to make sure that they're the same. They look pretty much so. So now what we're going to do, we want these loops on the outside, right? We don't want to bring them all the way through. So you want to hold your loop firmly. I'm going to cut off this length here on the inside so that I can pull my wire through. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it because I want to keep this loop here. So I'm just going to bend it over the wire, and I'm holding very firmly here so it doesn't pull that loop through. Then I'm coming right up underneath that bend, holding very firmly, and I'm going to swing it around. So we have that. We've got way too much paraphernalia on this table. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to cut off this excess length so it's easier for me to pull that wire through. Holding very firmly on my loop and the frame wire. I'm going to get my needle nose and I'm going to bend that wire. Then I'm going to swing it around. I'm not going to lock anything in yet till I know that they're lined up. And that's what we got. This one I'm going to rock in just a little bit more. And it's pouring rain again. We've had rain off and on all week. Now before I do anything else, I'm going to do the other side because that's how I roll. So I'm going to cut off, open that up. So I'm going to hold very firmly, bend that in, then come where the bend is and swing that wire around. And this, I'm going to cut off this excess length so I can just make life easier for myself and feed my wire through. I'm going to bend that down. It's hitting the frame. Then I'm going to swing that wire around. These are up a little high, so I'm going to see what I mean, why we match up. These are coming up a little high, so I'm going to open up. What I mean is the spread in the loop is coming up higher, and I'm just simply going to push it in and push it down. Now I'm going to match up, and I'm going to push it in. That's better. Then I'm going to grab from behind and I'm going to turn it. And that should have lined it up a lot more. So now I'm going to swing this wire around. And you know what I'm thinking, you guys? I think I want those loops in a little bit more. I think so. I'm always changing my mind for those of you that have ever watched me. I'm going to open this up So you'll see what I'm thinking here in a second. And I'm actually going to get my round nose. I'm going to pull that in a little bit more. It was starting to look a little wingy to me. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to pull that in. And you know what? I don't want to use these pliers. Those are double round nose. And both sides of the pliers are rounded. And I don't want to ding my wire. Straighten that out a little bit. Line those up. Yeah, that's better. So I'm going to hold very firmly because I've already bent on that wire, and I'm going to bring it over very firmly and bring it over. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, I'm fiddling a lot. And these are pretty close now in size. So I'm going to get this open. Just matching up the best that I can. And now I'm going to bring these wires up and over, up, kind of pulling them up on an angle a little bit. And over. This is what I mean. It can be anything you want it to be. I'm still not quite sure on the wings. This is my creative process, you guys. Actually thinking about cutting them out. We'll see what I think when they're done. I can always cut them out. Before I do anything else, I'm going to do the other side. Because we still got to add another bead in. So let's check that out. You can also bring in wire very easily. So let me see if I have enough to go around again. I hope so. Barely, barely, barely. I think I'm just gonna make it. Could you imagine if I wrapped every single one of those beads while on camera, you guys? I'd be here for 4 hours. Okay, I'm gonna have enough. They're cut off perfectly on the inside. This one was just exactly enough. Amazing. Straighten up my wire. When you're working with this short a wire, you just got to do everything in little movements. And that's perfect. They both ended up perfectly. When I bring them together like this, I need to cinch that down. Actually, that's not bad. But I may later, because of the way that I think, cut that out and bring in more wire. And then I'll always show you guys different ideas of what you can do. That's going to need to be trimmed a little bit. I don't want it sticking out on back. I just want it rolling to the inside of this leg. Honestly, I figured about an hour, but we're about an hour and a half in now. So that's obviously too long. Cut it there. It's still a little long. I don't want it sticking out on the back. I just want it rolling in. So I'm using my flat nose coming off that plier and roll that plier off the loop and rolling it in. So let's match up. How long do we want our earrings? And then we're going to put in another bead. So let's see how long they are from the drop of the beads. So at the middle point, so I want about a 2-inch earring. And that means that I am going to cut some of these legs off. So this is 1, 2.5. I've got to roll these wires back up here. So where the tips of the wires come together, I've got to roll them back. So I'm going to need a good 1/2 inch to roll them back. So I'm just going to bring them down about 1/4 inch for right now. I can always make them smaller if I need to. Just going to bring these together, come down 1/4 inch, and match them up. These are very 70s. These were so popular with people doing it with garage wire. So let's put them on my board where the bottom of this frame starts, and that'll tell me if they're even in length. Bring those together, and they are. So now we're going to add a bead, but we're going to roll our legs back first. So I'm going to cross these over even more. I'm doing it up here. Want them to meet as close as possible in the middle. I really hope you enjoyed this, everyone. I'm going to use my number 1, and I'm just going to roll back. Then I'm going to turn my work towards me, put the number 1 on top, and I'm going to roll back. And I'm supporting that frame wire. So we have this. That's going to be about a 2-inch earring. It's almost the same length as this one, and I never measured or did anything on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this side. Make sure it's flush against the leg. And let's do this side. All right, now we're gonna line them up, meaning I want them as close together as possible, and I'm rocking them. And that's as I'm pushing in, and that's gonna keep them lined up and together. This one I need just to tuck in just a little bit more. Just saw about a tiny little bit of space there. So I'm just rocking them as I'm pushing them in without compromising anything. Boy, these are just something else, aren't they? Especially with those garnets. They're so bling bling. All right. So do we want to add a bead? I think so. And it can either be copper. I don't have smaller garnets, I don't think. Let me check, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I don't have any 2mm or 3mm garnet beads, so I'm going to set these with a 3mm copper bead. So I've just grabbed myself some scrap wire, and I am debating if I want the bead in the back, just resting in the back right here, or if I want the bead sitting on top. And I think on this one, I want the bead sitting on top. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to wrap a leg, and I want my wire, since I want my bead sitting on top, I want my wire coming from underneath and up and over. So the wire is always going to be coming up. That means that whatever I'm setting in that wire, it's going to be sitting on the top. If you want the wire to be sitting in the bead to be sitting in the back, then you would start wrapping from the back. So now I'm debating on how many wraps I want to put in here. So let me get my needle nose. Slide this down. That's 3. This is the 4th. That's the 5th. Okay, so now we're going to feed the bead through. I don't know, I should have put, there it is. Got to put that little guy in my little bucket. He's going to roll off the table. Oh, I'm watching my hummingbird. She literally comes to me when her feeders needs to be filled. I feed my hummingbirds all winter, especially in winter, because they're starving. There isn't a lot of nectar for them. Okay, so I've got to feed this through the middle because I'm going to be weaving down. So I'm going to hold my bead. And now here's where I'm going to start tightening it up. Want it to sit right here. So I'm holding my 2 loops together and tightening that bead up because I want it kind of sitting on top of the frame. So I'm using, now they're perfectly together. They're really tight. And if you haven't worked with 26 gauge weaving wire and you're new to it, it's not like 28 where you can just keep grabbing it and sliding it through. It will have a tendency to harden much faster. So that's 4. It's going to be 5. How many do I have over here? But see, it just brought these perfectly together on top. So lining them up. I think I'm going to just use this wire up. I just got to make sure the piece of scrap I get next will be enough for my other earring, which I will do off camera. I'm going to see if this helps. I'm kind of fighting it up here. See if that helps me hold everything together. No, I'm spreading it apart, which is not what I wanted to do. So we've got and this wire is pretty hardened already because it's scrap wire. So I did 6 or 7 wraps. You do as many as your heart desires. I'm going to come in, cut that, and roll back. And then we'll finish up our earring. I'm going to be putting in a twisted jump ring. Isn't that pretty? My goodness. And that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to do this side off camera and I'll be right back and we're almost done. Okay, so I didn't have any twisted jump rings, so I'm just going to use a standard 18 gauge. I've already pre-made my ear hooks, and these are decorative ear hooks. And if you've been watching me for a while, I've showed so many times how to make ear hooks, also known as fish hooks. See how pretty those are? And all I'm going to do is just run this through the loops, and our earrings are done, and they're just magnificent. Then I'm going to tighten them, rocking my jump rings back and forth as they rub against each other, and line them up. And I give them a good flat squeeze. Then I tighten up my loop. And ladies and gentlemen, here are our really cool, let me turn this, beautiful garnet or whatever gemstone you used earrings. I really hope you enjoyed that, everyone. Give me your feedback. Let me know if you have any questions. Would love to see your work. You can always go to my facebook.com/DDLYNN designs, that's plural, or my Instagram. Anyways, thank you all so much for being a part of this magical, wonderful, ancient art of wire. As always, I wish for you all that you wish for yourselves. Have a wonderful, magical wire art day. Bye for now.